There are certain truths we spend most of our lives avoiding. Truths about time, about fragility, about the people we love standing on ground that's far less solid than we pretend. For over 3 decades, Jeremy Clarkson was the man who seemed immune to all of it. The loudest voice, the biggest personality, the one who laughed at danger and made millions believe that some people simply don't break. And then, at 66 years old, everything changed. When the diagnosis came aggressive, unexpected, life-altering, the world waited to hear from Jeremy himself. Press statements, interviews, the usual machinery of celebrity crisis management. But what came instead was something far more powerful. A single photograph, a handful of words, and for the first time, the woman who had stood beside him through the chaos, the woman millions had watched fall in love with this impossible man, finally spoke. What Lisa Hogan revealed wasn't just about Jeremy's health. It was about what happens when invincibility shatters, when the strongest people we know become the most vulnerable, and when love is tested not by adventure or fame, but by something far more frightening. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to a time when Jeremy Clarkson seemed untouchable, and the world had no idea how quickly that would change. For those who remember the late 1990s and 2000s, Jeremy Clarkson wasn't just a television presenter. He was a cultural phenomenon. Born in Doncaster in 1960, Clarkson spent his early years in journalism, writing about cars with a wit and irreverence that made automotive writing traditionally dry, technical, forgettable, suddenly entertaining. He had a gift for finding the humanity in machinery, the stories in metal and speed. But it was Top Gear that transformed him from columnist to icon. Alongside Richard Hammond and James May, Clarkson helped create something that transcended its premise. What began as a motoring show became appointment television for entire families. Fathers and sons watched together. Couples debated their favorite challenges. Office workers quoted his one-liners the next morning. They raced across the Bolivian death road. They built cars out of shopping carts. They turned a Reliant Robin into a space shuttle. And through it all, Jeremy was the anchor, the one whose opinion mattered, whose laugh was infectious, whose presence made everything feel bigger. At its peak, Top Gear was watched by 350 million people worldwide, not just in Britain, everywhere. For viewers now in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, those years represent something specific, a time before streaming fractured audiences, before social media turned every opinion into a battlefield, back when millions of people could share the same moment, the same laugh, the same Sunday evening ritual. Jeremy Clarkson became the voice of that era, unapologetic, larger than life, seemingly indestructible. But what audiences loved most wasn't the cars or the stunts, it was him. The man who made mistakes and didn't hide them, who argued with producers and didn't pretend to be perfect, who got things wrong and somehow made that part of the appeal. The success brought everything success usually brings. Books that topped bestseller lists, international tours, a level of fame that made him recognizable in countries he'd never visited. And yet, beneath all of it, something else was building. The years of constant travel, the relentless filming schedules, the pressure of maintaining a global brand while living under constant public scrutiny. By his 50s, Jeremy Clarkson had achieved more than most television personalities could dream of. But he'd also accumulated the wear that comes with that kind of life. The body keeps score, always. And for Clarkson, the bill was coming due. But success always comes with a price. And sometimes that price doesn't present itself until decades later, in ways nobody saw coming. When Jeremy Clarkson bought Diddley Squat Farm in the Cotswolds, most people assumed it was a wealthy man's retirement hobby, a place to escape, a project to keep him busy, nothing serious. What nobody knew was that this farm, this muddy, chaotic, impossibly difficult farm, would become the stage for the most important chapter of his life. Clarkson's Farm premiered in 2021, and almost immediately, it became clear this wasn't a vanity project. This was Jeremy Clarkson failing publicly, repeatedly, in ways that were both hilarious and deeply human. Crops failed. Machinery broke. Government regulations crushed his plans. Weather destroyed months of work in single afternoons. For perhaps the first time in his career, viewers weren't watching Jeremy Clarkson succeed. They were watching him struggle, and they loved him for it, because struggling is universal. Success is isolating, but failure real, honest, exhausting failure, that's something everyone understands. The show became one of Amazon Prime's most successful series, not because of spectacle, but because of authenticity. But behind the scenes, another story was quietly unfolding. Her name was Lisa Hogan, an Irish actress and former model. Lisa had lived a life largely outside the spotlight. She valued privacy, authenticity, real connection over celebrity culture. When she and Jeremy began appearing together on the show, audiences noticed something immediately: chemistry. Not the manufactured chemistry of reality television, not the performative affection of celebrity couples desperate to stay relevant. Real chemistry, the kind that comes from two people who genuinely enjoy each other's company, who make each other laugh, who built something together that exists outside public perception. Over the following seasons, Lisa became an integral part of the show. She helped run the farm shop. She offered perspective when Jeremy's ideas spiraled into chaos. She brought balance to his natural tendency toward excess, and viewers watched as something beautiful developed. A partnership, a relationship built not on red carpets or headlines, but on shared work, shared frustration, shared small victories that meant everything. For those who'd followed Jeremy's career for decades, seeing him in a stable, loving relationship was quietly revolutionary. The man who'd built his persona on being difficult, opinionated, impossible, here he was, visibly softened by love. But what the cameras didn't show was what was happening inside Jeremy's body. The first warning came in September 2024. Jeremy began experiencing symptoms that couldn't be ignored. Tightness in his chest, difficulty breathing, the kind of warning signs that, for a man in his mid-60s, demand immediate attention. Tests revealed something terrifying: severe arterial blockages. One artery was completely blocked, another was heading in the same direction. His heart, the organ that had powered him through decades of adventures, stress, travel, and relentless work, was failing him. Surgery followed. Stents were placed. Doctors warned him about lifestyle changes, about slowing down, about recognizing that his body was no longer the reliable machine it had been for 65 years. For anyone watching, it was sobering. Jeremy Clarkson, the man who'd raced Formula One cars, crossed the Arctic Circle, survived countless near misses brought low by something invisible, something that doesn't care about fame or personality or how many people know your name. But he recovered. Treatment was successful. Life returned to something resembling normal. The farm continued. Filming resumed. Season 5 began production. And everyone, Jeremy, Lisa, the crew, the millions of fans worldwide, believed the worst was over. They were wrong. Because while the heart surgery had saved his life, another threat was already developing. Quietly, aggressively. And when it finally revealed itself, the news would shake everyone who'd ever cared about Jeremy Clarkson. And then, everything changed. The diagnosis came in late 2024. Prostate cancer. Aggressive. Requiring immediate intervention. For a man who'd just survived major cardiac surgery, the timing seemed impossibly cruel. But cancer doesn't wait for convenient moments. It doesn't care about recovery timelines or filming schedules or harvest seasons. What makes this story particularly wrenching is when Jeremy learned the news. Harvest season was approaching, the most critical period on any farm. Months of work culminate in a handful of weeks where weather, timing, and luck determine whether a year of effort results in success or financial disaster. Jeremy would later reveal that the surgery was scheduled for the middle of harvest, the absolute worst timing imaginable. But when it comes to aggressive cancer, there is no better time. There's only now or too late. The moment he told Caleb Cooper and Charlie Ireland, his closest colleagues on the farm, was captured on camera. "I've got cancer," Jeremy said simply. No preamble, no careful explanation. Just 4 words that changed the atmosphere completely. Caleb, the young farmer who'd worked alongside Jeremy for years, looked stunned. Charlie, the land agent who'd navigated countless farm crises, struggled to find words because this wasn't a failed crop. This wasn't a government regulation or bad weather. This was life and death. What followed was a masterclass in vulnerability from a man who'd spent decades projecting invincibility. Jeremy spoke about the diagnosis openly. He discussed the treatment plan. He acknowledged his fear, not dramatically, not seeking sympathy, but with the quiet honesty of someone who'd been forced to confront mortality in a way he never had before. The surgery took place in early 2025. Doctors removed the affected portion of his prostate. The operation was complex but necessary. If the cancer had been caught later, if Jeremy had ignored symptoms or delayed testing, the outcome could have been catastrophically different. Early detection likely saved his life. But surgery is only the beginning. In the days that followed, Jeremy appeared on camera from his hospital bed. The visual was jarring for anyone who'd spent decades watching him race cars and wrestle with farm equipment. Here was Jeremy Clarkson, vulnerable, tired, uncertain. He spoke directly to viewers with a rawness that felt unprecedented. He admitted that some aspects of the surgery hadn't gone exactly as planned. He acknowledged that recovery would take time, that the future remained uncertain. And then he said something that left millions of viewers holding their breath. "If this is all successful, I'll see you for season 6. If." That single word carried the weight of everything unsaid. For perhaps the first time in his public life, Jeremy Clarkson couldn't promise anything, couldn't project confidence about what came next, couldn't hide behind humor or bravado. All he could offer was hope and vulnerability, and the acknowledgement that some battles aren't won through personality or determination alone. Throughout all of this, Lisa Hogan remained largely invisible to the public. She wasn't giving interviews, she wasn't posting updates, she wasn't performing the role that celebrity partners are often expected to perform during health crises. Instead, she was doing something far more important. She was simply there. Friends close to the couple later revealed that Lisa had been Jeremy's constant presence throughout the diagnosis, surgery, and early recovery. Not for cameras, not for public perception, for him. But as Jeremy lay in that hospital bed, as viewers around the world processed the news, as the reality of his situation settled over everyone who'd ever laughed at his jokes or admired his work, one question remained. What would Lisa say? Because sometimes the people who love us see things we can't. Sometimes they carry burdens we don't even realize they're holding. Sometimes their perspective reveals truths that change everything. And when Lisa Hogan finally spoke, what she revealed was simpler and more powerful than anyone expected. But the story doesn't end there. The news of Jeremy Clarkson's cancer diagnosis spread across the internet like wildfire. Within hours, the hashtag #GetWellJeremy was trending globally. Fans from dozens of countries shared messages of support. Former colleagues posted tributes. Even people who disagreed with Jeremy over the years put aside differences to express genuine concern. Richard Hammond and James May, as partners through the entire Top Gear journey, shared heartfelt messages. The tone wasn't performative, it was real. Because this wasn't celebrity drama, this was 3 old friends confronting the reality that they weren't young anymore, that the adventures they'd shared were part of a chapter that was slowly, inevitably closing. Thousands of farmers across Britain and Ireland sent messages specifically referencing Jeremy's advocacy for agricultural issues, his willingness to use his platform to highlight struggles that often go unnoticed in urban-focused media. The outpouring was immediate and overwhelming. But amid all the public statements and social media tributes, one voice remained notably absent: Lisa's. Days passed, then a week. Speculation grew about why Jeremy's partner, the woman millions had watched fall in love with him over 5 seasons, hadn't said anything publicly. Some wondered if she was protecting her privacy. Others worried the situation might be worse than reported. The silence felt conspicuous. And then, quietly, she spoke. The photograph Lisa shared was simple. Jeremy, back at Diddley Squat Farm. Not in a hospital bed. Not looking frail or defeated. Just Jeremy, sitting outside, surrounded by the land he poured his heart into, looking tired, yes, but also present, alive, there. Her caption was brief: "Thank you for all your kind messages and support. We're taking things day by day, but he's home, and that's what matters most." Those 25 words did something extraordinary. They provided comfort without false promises, acknowledged reality without despair, offered hope without certainty. And perhaps most importantly, they revealed the philosophy that had been guiding Lisa through the most frightening period of her relationship with Jeremy. Day by day, not grand plans, not dramatic promises about full recovery, not assurances that everything would return to normal, just presence, just gratitude for one more day, just the quiet recognition that sometimes survival is measured in small increments. The response to Lisa's post was immediate and emotional. Thousands of people, many of whom had walked similar roads with their own partners, parents, or friends, recognized the weight of what she was carrying, because being the healthy one is its own burden. Being the person who holds hope when your partner is too exhausted to. Being the one who processes fear alone so they don't have to carry yours on top of their own. Being strong when what you want most is to collapse. Lisa's post revealed something that the cameras on Clarkson's farm had only hinted at: the depth of their bond. Not the performative romance of celebrity couples, not the Instagram perfect relationship that exists primarily for public consumption, but the real thing, the kind of love that shows up when life stops being an adventure and becomes a daily struggle just to get through. What happened next surprised everyone who'd been following the story. There's a particular kind of reckoning that happens in our 60s. For decades, we operate under the assumption that there's always more time, more adventures, more chances to do the things we've been putting off. And then something happens, a diagnosis, a surgery, a friend who doesn't survive theirs, and suddenly the math changes. Jeremy Clarkson spent most of his life as the exception, the man who broke rules and got away with it, who survived controversies that would have ended other careers, who always seemed to land on his feet no matter how far he fell. But cancer doesn't care about exceptions. It doesn't respect fame or past achievements or how many people know your name. It treats everyone exactly the same. And in that brutal equality, there's a strange kind of comfort. Anyone who has ever sat in a doctor's office waiting for test results understands what Jeremy experienced. The particular silence that fills the room, the way time seems to stop and accelerate simultaneously, the bargaining that happens in your head. Anyone who has ever loved someone going through treatment understands what Lisa experienced. The helplessness, the fear you hide, the smile you maintain while your world is crumbling. In that sense, this story isn't really about celebrity. It's about something far more fundamental. It's about two people famous or not confronting the reality that life is fragile, that the time we have with the people we love is neither guaranteed nor infinite. And it's about what we choose to do with that knowledge. Some people retreat into denial, some become bitter, some give up. But Jeremy and Lisa chose differently. They chose presence. They chose to measure success not in seasons filmed or projects completed, but in days together, in small victories. In the stubborn insistence on continuing to build a life even when that life looks different than it did before. As of today, Jeremy Clarkson's prognosis remains cautiously optimistic. The cancer was caught early, a detail he has repeatedly emphasized because early detection genuinely saves lives. Treatment is ongoing. Recovery continues. But more importantly, he's still here. Still working on the farm, still planning for seasons that may or may not come, still arguing with Caleb about planting schedules and driving Charlie to distraction with impractical schemes, still showing up. And beside him, Lisa continues doing what she's done since the beginning, not seeking attention, not making grand statements, just being the steady presence that allows someone else to be vulnerable. Their story has resonated so deeply because it reflects a truth that every long-term relationship eventually faces. The test isn't how you celebrate success, it's how you survive crisis. It's whether the person you love can look at you on your worst day tired, scared, uncertain, and choose to stay anyway. For viewers who've spent decades watching Jeremy Clarkson, this chapter has been difficult to witness because it forces us to confront something we've been avoiding. The people who defined our childhoods, our young adulthoods, our shared cultural moments. They're aging, they're vulnerable. They won't be here forever, and neither will we. But there's unexpected beauty in that recognition. Because when we stop pretending that time is infinite, we start valuing the time we have. We watch that extra episode. We call that old friend. We tell the people we love that they matter before it's too late. We live more intentionally, and perhaps that's the real legacy of this story. Not the diagnosis, not the treatment, not even the recovery, but the reminder that the best response to fragility is in denial. It's gratitude. Jeremy Clarkson's greatest challenge was never a race across the Sahara. It was never a controversial statement or a heated argument with producers. It was this: a 66-year-old man forced to confront his own mortality, a partner learning to hope and fear simultaneously, two people building a life while acknowledging how quickly it can disappear. As of this recording, Season 6 remains uncertain, not because Jeremy has given up, but because some things can't be promised. Some futures can't be guaranteed. All anyone can do is take it day by day, show up when you can, rest when you must, and treasure the small, ordinary moments that turn out to be anything but. What Lisa Hogan revealed when she finally spoke wasn't medical information or dramatic declarations. It was something simpler. That real love looks like a photograph of someone on an ordinary day. Tired but present. Struggling but still here. That's the story, not the diagnosis, not the crisis, but what remains when everything else falls away. And for millions of viewers around the world, that simple truth has made all the difference. Before you go, let us know in the comments, has someone in your life shown you what real partnership looks like during difficult times? And if this story reminded you what truly matters, subscribe for more untold stories of resilience, love, and the people who taught us how to face life's hardest moments with grace.